Another exciting Wednesday evening with a wonderful topic and also guest speaker with us today. So without any further delays, let me introduce Dhruva Prabhu. Dhruva Prabhu's introduction goes like this. The video I was just playing was him several years ago. We'll ask him how old he was back then once we get started. So although now a young man, his childhood was anything but ordinary. Unlike most Western youth, he grew up in ashrams in India and America, where his parents, being initiated by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, embraced the teachings of India and her eternal religion of Sanatana Dharma, which included reverence for Lord Narashimha, the god of yoga and protection. In the ashrams, he used to serve his deity form on a regular basis, creating a connection of loving attachment to him. His protective nature captivated his mind and heart, especially since, like Prahlad, he was only a child and knew that the Lord would show compassion to him as someone who was completely dependent on him. As he grew older, his attraction for Lord Narashimha grew more and more, eventually developing into an intense desire to search out and find his temples in India. Though he was only a young teenager, when the chance finally came, he seized it and ended up going to Ahobilam, where the Lord is said to have manifested on earth. On the southeastern coast of the country, after that first experience, Dhruva Prabhu knew he had to find more Narasimha temples and document them for posterity, to show the world. Battling his way through the hottest jungles, mountains, and deserts, he found the most incredible temples dedicated to this most mysterious Lord. It has taken him over 28 years, and he found just under 1,500 of his incredible temples. Having adventures of a lifetime and meeting some of the most empowering saints and yogis who helped and encouraged him on his quest to find each and every temple dedicated to the god of yoga and divine protector Narasimha. These adventures and dedication have led him to publishing a book, Narasimha, the Lost Temples, Volume 1 of a trilogy. Currently, he's working on the second book, Narashimha, the God of Yoga, which will show how yoga originated from his manifestation. So let us all welcome him. Today's topic is Narasimha, the protector of devotees. Now he's a Narasimha Bhakta, so kindly give him your full attention. Otherwise, who knows, Lord Narashimha Dev may not be very pleased with you if you are doing something else while his Bhakta is speaking to us. So let's unmute and loudly chant the Maha Mantra together.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare. Jai Nrsimhadev. Can everybody hear me loud and clear?
Yes, bro.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
wonderful.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank Ramachandra Prabhu for giving me this nice opportunity to come and speak with you all. It gives me a lot of excitement to meet new Narasimha devotees and congregations that I haven't met before. That's like my biggest excitement, obviously, after finding his new temples of him when I travel. But so Prabhuji asked me to speak about Lord Nrsimha as our protector and divine father. So for me as a young boy, you know, I was born in ISKCON in New Vrindavan. And it was a special place growing up there because, as you all know, there's a big kind of Shanti Narasimha. They call him Prahlad Narasimha, but technically he's just Shanti Narasimha with Prahlad, or like Yoga Narasimha. And Srila Prabhupada installed a small, like Ugra Narasimha deity this big. And that deity was given to me by my father and a couple other sannyasis when I was about just before I went to Gurukul at age 4. And I'll never forget it. He told me, he is your protector and your father. Those were, kind of my father and other kind of sannyasi guru uncles in ISKCON. They told me the same thing. So I used to carry that deity with me in my backpack. Or, in New Vrindavan, we had horses, so we would ride horses. So I would kind of put Narashimha on the front, on the saddle and ride around with my horse. So, because I had this understanding, he's your father. And as your father and protector, he loves you. And therefore, there wasn't so many, how do you say, as a child, you're innocent. It was like you had this very personal uh, kind of feeling with him, like you do a father, right? Our own, like our material fathers. So,
Prabhu,
and then,
sorry,
yes,
sorry to interrupt you. Your camera seems to be off.
my camera's off. Let me
Yeah.
check. It says stop video.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's try it. Let me try it again. Okay, now I'll turn it on. Tell me if it's on. Is that better?
I can't see you now. I guess it's. Please continue.
Can everybody else? Yeah.
Yeah,
Can everybody else see me?
Yeah, it just breaks up in between, but that's okay. At least your face is visible.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So when they were installing this beautiful deity of Santi Narashimha in Vrindavan, I'll never forget that experience. That kind of really started my addiction to him as my protector. That day when thousands of devotees were there and all the like ISKCON sannyasis, and just this, everybody was screaming Narsimha, Narsimha, and everybody was crying. And that I got to do like the first puja of him, and I was the same size as the Prahlad statue, which is not so big, because I was hardly I was in my 5th year, so I was turning 5 that year. And then dressing him every day, we would come to Mangalartik and I would help the pujari, who at that time was called Ganga Prabhu. He would let us dress Narashimha, and Narashimha was so big, we would have to sit on his lap and put the gold sunken chakra and the jewelry. That love, I just always understood what I was told and what I learned as a child. Narashimha is my protector. He is the protector, the Raksha Bhuvana, the universal protector. And as a father, so it's not just like a very black and white, old, impersonal protector and divine father. He's so personal. He came and protected Prahlad. And then Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, and then all the other devotees' prayers, which we learned in Gurukul, like the Sapta Rishis, Nard Rishi, right? So many different devotees would offer prayers to him saying the same thing. If you offer to him with love and devotion, he will always protect you no matter what. So, as I got older, I won't go into too much detail, because when I come to see you guys in New Jersey next month, I'll get into it a lot more, because we don't have much time now. But I didn't do the conventional go to school, college, and the typical responsible things that people do. Get a job, get married, and all that. I was trying to find a way to do something more entrepreneurial, and in that search, I didn't know that there was a Hobalam. We weren't taught in ISKCON growing up that there was a place where Lord Narashimha manifests in India. We were mainly taught about Lakshmi Narsimha, and that small deity that was given to me was Ugra Narsimha, and that was about it. Lakshmi Narsimha and Ugra Narsimha. And when I was a young teenager and I found this book, and the page opened it up, it fell on the ground by accident, and it said, "The Abode of Narsimha, 9 temples lost in the jungles." I I immediately was like, that's it. It was like the light bulb came on, and that's my calling. And that's what started me on my adventures as a young teenager, which most of my friends were going to school. You know, they were concerned with more of that, I guess, materially responsible element in life. I was not, I had no interest in that. I immediately became hooked. He manifests, there's a pillar, remnants of a pillar. I have to go there. And I was like 16 at the time. And I was never fond of listening to the rules or authorities. So especially when I heard it was dangerous and I shouldn't go there, and people told me, don't go there, it was immediately like, I have to go there. This is so mysterious. This is where he came from on this material world, where he manifests. And when I read in that book, it said Ramanuja Acharya went there, Madhvacharya, Shankaracharya, the Saptarishis meditated there. I mean, the list goes on and on. I was like, I must go. And then immediately going to Ahobilam by myself, that was an unbelievable adventure with tigers and sleeping in the temple by myself with my friend Madhu, and there was bears. And it was so unreal and so like, you know, like almost like Indiana Jones finding treasure. And back then, Ahobilam was, nobody looked after any of the temples except two. There's 11 temples there, only, and there's the original 9. So one in Lower Ahobilam is looked after, Lakshmi Narashimha, which was established by Ramanuja Acharya. And then Upper Ahobilam, the Ugra Narashimha in the cave, is looked after. The rest of the temples were completely abandoned. Some of the deities were just outside leaning against trees. The temple was destroyed. And that documentary that you were just kind of watching, when that documentary came out, a lot of the Brahmins were upset with me. They were like, now you made it to where it's like a tourist attraction. So many people come and it pollute Ahobilam. For a while, they were upset with me. But that kind of documentary put Ahobilam on the map. And then all of a sudden, people started donating. The temples started becoming reconstructed. The deities were put back inside, reinstalled. So now it's a completely different place. It's totally like black and white from when I used to go in the early days in the 90s. You could go inside the temples and do abhishek, full abhishek yourself as a Westerner, which now they, even though I've gone to Ahobilam 150 times, and they all know me, they won't allow me to do what I used to do there, which was, take the mercy. Because growing up in ISKCON, one of the things you learned was, be like the bee, the nectar, go for the nectar, get the nectar when you can. And the first trip to Ahobilam, I really just soaked it up. I was like, I became obsessed with Narashimha. Like, there's 9 forms. I thought there was only like 2. And there must be more temples in India. So I inquired. Obviously, they didn't speak much English, but I had that Ugra Narasimha painting by Mother Jadharani, the one that Srila Prabhupada, where he's tearing Hiranyakashipu's intestines out. It's very ferocious. Now, Srila Prabhupada said every grihasta should have that at the entrance of their home, that painting. He didn't say Shanti Narashimha or Lakshmi Narashimha or Prahlad Narashimha. He said that Ugra Narashimha. Very important for grihastas to worship. So I had that little painting with me, and I was asking, is there any other Narasimha temples? And of course, the Brahmins in Ahobilam were like, no, it's only Ahobilam. There's no need to go anywhere else. So it was interesting. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Because obviously in Vrindavan, there's thousands of temples everywhere. There's thousands of temples of Krishna, millions, Shiva, Ganesh, right? Everybody under the sun. How is it that this most important aspect of Krishna incarnation, who is actually the most potent of all and so personal, how is this? There's only one place where he manifested, and that's it. So it ended up becoming like this incredible amazing adventure. Sometimes I still look back and I'm like, how did I do that? I was like this white guy. I didn't speak any of the languages. My Sanskrit was okay. People didn't speak much Sanskrit back then. And it just started off like a domino effect. And I would travel on the buses, rickshaws, and I would always hold up my Narashimha painting, and then I would have a notebook, and I would buy maps from the bus stands or the train stations. Back then it was maps. Now it's Google Maps. Back then it was so unbelievable. And somehow or another, Narashimha would send somebody who knew enough English, who knew of a temple, or who would take me to someone who knew of a temple, and they would like mark it on the map, or they would write in Telugu, or wherever, whatever state I was in, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and that they would bring me to the bus driver, and then the bus driver would make me sit with him, and then all of a sudden he would stop and just point in the distance, Narashimha. Sometimes it was in the middle of the night, and I would have have to go in the darkness down this pathway, and there would be a temple there, and I would wake up the Brahmins. I would find the house, knock on the door. Never did the Brahmins say no. They would immediately grab the keys, or they would tell me to go by myself. And that started me on this addiction of Narashimha and finding his temples in Andhra Pradesh, which is now Telangana and Andhra. And I kind of disappeared in Andhra for probably 6 months or more, and I found like 250 temples. And I was just looking through some of my old photos from back then, because I had a Minolta camera my father gifted me. I think he had it since 1978 or something. And so 35 millimeter. And I was looking through some of those old photos, and I was like, my God, India was out of this world. Like, it was so beautiful and simple and easy back then, even though the travel was difficult. Like from Hyderabad to Ahobilam took me like 15, 16 hours on a bus. Now you can get there 4 hours, from Hyderabad, because all the new highways and everything. But I miss those times because it was so rural and so much more difficult to find him. It was more ecstatic for me. And I would like sleep literally on the side of the road in a bus stand. And back then, bus stands were just like sometimes bamboo poles and like a thatched roof. And I didn't know that the bus would come, 10 hours later, because sometimes there would only be one bus a day, or two if you're lucky. So I would just sleep there in the pitch black. It was wild. I miss those days. I hanker for those days. And, some of these temples were always like on the tops of mountains, in caves, in tunnels, or underground in caves in Andhra Pradesh. It was so, so awesome. And then, after that initial kind of like high, that rush, which nothing in this world compares to that for me, as far as like ecstasy or happiness. Even though, much later on I got, marriage and kids and all that stuff. Those things don't, come anywhere close to those experiences for me, or that love, or that commitment, and kind of good addiction to Narsimha. And, then it kind of, as I kept going, I had to figure out as I got older, how do I stay in India? I mean, like I said, when I come to Jersey, I'll fill you in on a lot more. It was amazing. And from Andhra, then you have to go down to Tamil Nadu. Now, I didn't know that each state in India has like rivalry, like which is the best state, which is some states were heavily colonized by, the Portuguese, the French, then the different Christian groups, I didn't know all that stuff. We didn't have Instagram back then where you could just research something like that. And I was never into like listening to the news or any of that stuff. So, from the people in Andhra, they were like, oh, there's absolutely no Narsimha temples in Tamil Nadu, like, and Tamil Nadu is one of the most powerful areas in India, because obviously the Ramayana, even the Mahabharata. So many personalities went through there, and then some of the biggest dynasties, the Cholas, the Pallavas, the Vijayanagar empires were there. And their Ishtadevs, their Kuladevs, were all Narsimha. They might say, oh, Tirupati Balaji. No, he came much later. Ranganath, much later. Even Ramanuja called Ranganath Shayana Narsimha. He worshipped him as Narsimha because Ramanuja's Istadev was Narsimha. So going to Tamil Nadu, of course, I found hundreds. And then it was just kind of going state to state to state. But then I had to get back to America. So it became this like amazing, going to the West and doing my entrepreneur, saving up money and then coming back, and because I was free and I had no desire, I had no commitments of school or, even family or wanting to be in a relationship or have a job, I had this blessing of being able to just commit myself to this, I don't want to call it a task, but to this beautiful addiction of finding his temples. It became like an obsession for me. Only Narsimha. I was like sleeping Narsimha, dreaming, eating. Everything I did was just him, focused on him. And then it was very kind of, I could say, selfish. It was just like me and him. Nothing and nobody else mattered. And obviously, as I matured in my age and my knowledge of the scriptures, especially Srila Prabhupada's books, which unfortunately most people don't read these days. Reading, when I traveled on buses, I would have that one volume, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're not so big. I would just read, and chant. And then obviously I was studying the Puranas, the Upanishads, the Vedas, and trying to collect everything I could about Narsimha. And a lot was lost because of the different invasions, especially the Mughal and British invasions. Their whole thing was to destroy knowledge. So when I would go to different temples, I learned what is the Stala Purana? What is the history? They didn't know. They would say, Narsimha manifested here. And I would be like, wait, no, he manifested in a Hobalam. But every temple I went to, no, Narsimha manifested here. Whether it was in Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, even in Gujarat, some people say he manifested in Pakistan. There's a temple of Ugra Narsimha there, which is the oldest structure in Pakistan. It's a Narsimha temple. Even the government says it's the oldest temple structure in Pakistan. And, it was so far out because I realized very quickly that it was his people. That is how I was finding him. Of course, there was many mystical experiences, but it was always like his people. Sometimes there were young kids, boys, girls, middle-aged people, rich people, poor people, rickshaw drivers, millionaires, billionaires, Bollywood actors, actresses. There was such a variety of Narsimha Bhaktas. It blew my mind. First of all, it made me understand that I thought I loved him, but then I met these people and they had this like conviction that was way beyond what I thought, was real conviction and commitment to him. And they had no doubt. He was their protector. He's always protected them and he will always protect them. It was like this fearlessness, like that Prahlad Maharaj talks about. They didn't fear death. And I put this on tests sometimes because, it was quite dangerous what I did. There was, tigers, bears, huge cobras, and I was by myself most often. The times, and I would say, Narsimha, I'm only committed to you. So why would anything happen to me? Like why would you allow this? Now, obviously, I'm not Prahlad, and look what happened to Prahlad. He was tortured by his father. But I wanted to see how far I could push it. And over the years, it got so to the precipice of death or starvation because I was so determined to find his temples and his people that I really came to the understanding of how he is my divine father and protector every step of the way. Every moment of my life, he's constantly protected me and, giving me shelter and helped me in many instances, not just spiritual, but material as well. Because we're human beings, and we eat, we sleep, we mate, we defend. And so we're living in this material world, and we need both the spiritual and the material parallel. So I saw on so many levels, every level, how he protected me, and how when I would meet his people, whether the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, who prays to Narashimha every day for the protection of Sanatan. I've known Modi for a long time. I've known a lot of these big ministers because I would travel wearing a small veshti, like almost like a gamcha, and then I would have just a chadar, and I would have my kamandalu and my wooden shoes, because that's what we wore in the Gurukul. So I had nothing, and I was white. So I could, back then, these rich people, famous people in India, they didn't have bodyguards and all this nonsense they have now. They were very much more approachable. So I would be in a city and I would just flag someone down. Excuse me, do you speak English? And they'd be like, of course. I'd be like, oh, thank God. I haven't spoken English in months. I'm looking for a Narsimha temple. Can you kind of guide me? And then they were so kind. Oh, come with us. Well, my grandmother, she'll probably know, or my grandfather. If anyone will know, it's them. And then I learned another thing. Well, wait a minute. The elderly people, especially of the villages, like the village councils, they'll know the history or something. So then I started approaching, like, the old generation. And I learned so much from them about the Sthala Puranas, about the history of Ramanuja Acharya's relationship with Lord Nrsimhadev and his prayers, Madhvacharya, Shankaracharya. See, sometimes in ISKCON they brand Shankaracharya as a Mayavadi, which is just absolute nonsense. He was a Vaishnav, he became a Mayavad, and then in the end he understood that Mayavad is this impersonalism is inferior to Vaishnavism. And he immediately went back to Vaishnavism. And who was his main Ishtadev? Lord Nrsimha. There's so many mutts and ashrams and temples that Shankara established and worshipped. And especially up in northern India, past Rishikesh, Joshimat, where he was meditating in the cave, bathing, and then the Nrsimha Shalagram floated into his hands. That temple is there. Shankara, they say, worshiped that Shalagram till he left this world. So I was able to tap into a lot of these incredible devotees' devotion, and it kind of fueled me for years and years and years, and all along the way, not being like becoming more and more fearless. I don't know if stupid, some people would say, like, are you nuts? But I just had this fearlessness that nothing can happen to me, because all I'm trying to do is find him. I mean, I'm not trying to do a business, or like nowadays you'll see often, whether in the West or in India, spirituality is like mostly a business. They've made it a profitable industry with a lot of kind of self-proclaimed gurus, fake teachers. I mean, I even met people that they would say that they are Narsimha, like crazy stuff, or they're whoever. And I didn't care when I was young. Like, I met this guy, Sadhguru. He had this big fro. He helped me in my research. Kripalu. I didn't really care what their thing was, but if they spoke English, or they had the knowledge of scriptures or something, the local, or they had influence that could help me, I would kind of get to know them, and then they would facilitate my travels and help me. So it was such an awesome time and adventure in my life, as a mid teenager going into my 20s, early 20s, and still not being kind of caught up in the material, grihasta or material life. even though by then I had started my own business in India to support my research, because I always wanted to be independent. I never liked to take from people. I always thought, if you want to do something, do it, whether it's spiritually or materially, right? Like the little kid Dhruva, his mom was like, go to the forest. She didn't say, oh, Beta, I'll come with you. I'll cook for you every day while you meditate. She was like, go do it. So he did it, right? And Prahlad also meditated by himself. He was just sitting chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And these powerful devotees, these examples for us, they just did it. They didn't depend on anybody. Or they would have Nard Rishi would come and kind of give them a little guidance, and then they would go off. Or Brigu Maharishi, Vasishta Muni. Someone would come and give them a pinch of their opinion, or how they could easily approach the Lord. They would give them like a tip, and then they would do it. So I always liked that. I was like a bee around the flowers of his devotees. And, and every single one was so kind. I learned they represented the teachings of Prahlad, like no envy, no jealousy, no competition, which is something that's very much lacking in most spiritual traditions or movements these days. Is it's completely plagued with envy, jealousy, competition, and all this unnecessary disease. And none of them were. A few of the swamis were a little hesitant because I'm white, and the last white people in India invaded and destroyed the whole country. So I understood a lot of their hesitance, and most of these guys would be in the jungles of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, doing tapasya. They were not living a luxurious life and 5-star renunciate, none of this stuff. These guys were up at 2 a.m. It's just puja, it's mantras, it's rituals. So they kind of were a bit wary of me because, I'm white. So they were like, this guy's like a Sudra type of thing. But still, because of my persistence, I would never like give up. I kind of would gain their trust, and they would understand I'm not there to take. I'm there to kind of ask why they love Narashimha. Why are they worshiping Narashimha? What is it that draws you to Narashimha? And then I learned more how he is the foundation of Sanatana Dharma, the foundation of Vaishnavism. And we, in Krishna consciousness, we all worship, Radha Krishna, but you can't get to Radha Krishna without going through Narashimha, because Narashimha is, he removes the anarthas, and that's the problem. And the biggest anarthas is envy, jealousy. Like Hiranyakashipu just had those two faults, envy, jealousy. And those two things caused him to torture and try to kill his beautiful son. Ravan, his only thing was envy, jealousy. Otherwise he was an incredible being, And then at the end, you see Narsimha, even though we say Hiranyakashipu was a demon, he was so bad, but like, I look at Hiranyakashipu like, oh my God, if I could be put on the Lord's lap and like, put on Hiranyakashipu was put on Nrsimha's lap before Prahlad. So think of that, and often we portray him as such a bad person, but I always saw him as no. Like, how is that possible? And then the Lord sat on Hiranyakashipu's throne at the end. Now, Hiranyakashipu's throne was the most beautiful asana or throne ever built in the history. The demigods praise it, Lord Indra, because when he stole Lord Indra's throne, Hiranyakashipu said, "This is a throne? That you call this a throne? This is like garbage." So he had Vishvakarma build him a throne that was even worthy of the supreme Lord himself. So after he killed Hiranyakashipu, then he sat in his throne, and then the demigods like Lord Indra and Brahma were saying, "We have all built asanas and thrones for you to put your feet or to sit on, and you have not accepted any. But look, you have accepted the throne of Hiranyakashipu. Like praising that this Hiranyakashipu did this seva for the Lord. You know, and then when he killed Hiranyakashipu, he said, now I have freed you from these plagues, these diseases, you know, envy and jealousy. Not lust. Lust is biological, right? Greed is there. But if envy and jealousy are not there, greed doesn't come into play. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are biological, right? But the root cause of all problems in the material world is envy and jealousy, because then lust is crazy, eating is too much, sleeping is too, it becomes overwhelmed. So Hiranyakashipu, the Lord removed these from him. That's why Srila Prabhupada said, for grihastas, they should worship Ugra Narsimha. There's a lot of misconceptions in our movement, even by sannyasis. They don't know this stuff. They assume, but they have nothing to back it up. There's nothing in any scripture or any Purana or any Veda or anything by any of the yogis or rishis where it says that only brahmacharis and sannyasis can worship Ugra Narsimha. That's actually false. That's a lie. And I'm telling you, in my almost 30 years of research, nowhere is it said that. It only says in the Agama Kosh, the Shalagram Kosha, that only someone who, from the moment that he is born, the star sign is that of a Naishtika brahmachari. From the moment he's born, he's only allowed to worship the Tauni Ugra Narsimha or Jwala Narsimha Shalagrams. But no grihasta should even look at them. They're like a red-brown color. And women should never touch them. Grihastas shouldn't worship them. Only those who in their chart are born with this Naishtika brahmachari. That's it. But Prabhupada said every grihasta should have that painting in his home. Every temple, that painting should be in there. So because Ugra Narsimha protects you from envy and jealousy, and those are very much plaguing grihastas. I need more. Oh, my neighbor has a better car. Oh, she has a better sari. Oh, they have a bigger house. So as devotees, we want those anarthas removed. And who removes them? Narsimha. He really can help us, even though we want to fight. We don't want them removed. But for us, as a father, the father does what's best for us. As a true protector, a true protector is one that sometimes has to give a little bit of heaviness and almost like a punishment, like a father. They punish you with love. So taking the disease away in the form of envy, jealousy, and all this is painful to us because we're so attached, to the body. But Prahlad is so unbelievable, perfect example. And through his example, I would see all his people, Nrsimha's people, were like acting like Prahlad, like giving so like generously. Like I would show up at midnight, the bus driver would drop me in the pitch black in the jungle, and I would find the hut the Brahmin was living in, and I would knock on the door. They would invite me in. Do you need a place to sleep? Do you need food? And I would just be like, no, Narsimha, Narsimha. Immediately he would put his dhoti back on and we would go to the temple. And sometimes someone would hear I was there, the villagers would come and we'd be doing a puja at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was so unbelievable. And those experiences I cherish. And even now they're still there as I got older. Like I was just in India not too long ago. There was some very special experiences. I went to find one temple that I hadn't seen for 25 plus years, but then I ended up finding another temple that I didn't even know was in the same area, and was able to do abhishek and puja. And because I forgot where the other temple was, I mysteriously found this one. And then I was doing, the puja, and like there's leopards and everything. It was amazing. So, every day I see his mercy in the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, which are to me the most relevant teachings for today. People are struggling with so much, whatever, anxiety, depression, all this stuff. These new terms that have come out in the last years. But this boy, 5-6-year-old boy, was tortured, poisoned, thrown off a mountain. Elephants tried to trample him. And his father said, the last words Hiranyakashipu said to his son was, "I will remove your head from your torso, you rascal." Prahlad didn't have any trauma. Prahlad didn't have any aggression towards anyone, his torturers. He wasn't vengeful. He didn't need to go see a counselor for 10, 15 years. No, he did his duty. He became a husband, became a father. He became a ruler of both the demons and the demigods. The only time in the history where they never fought, because Prahlad was of demon blood, but he was a Vaishnav. So nobody fought when he ruled. And he did his svadharma. He did his duty. And he did it without trauma, without, how do you say, making excuses. He had no hate towards his father. I mean, I'm human. If my father was going to kill me and torture me, I don't know, that would be hard to let go of, because I'm in this conditioned body. But his example and his proof of Narashimha being the Raksha Bhuvana, the divine protector, is mind-blowing. He shows us through his prayers why Narashimha is our protector, and why, as Vaishnavas, especially Gaudiya Vaishnavas, why we should worship him, but seriously worship him, right? These prayers, Namaste Narashimhaya Praladadayane, Hiranyakashipu Shivatamta, Ito Nishima Parato Nishima. These were Ito Nishima Parato Nishima. This was chanted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in front of Lord Yoga Narashimha next to the Gundicha temple called Yagya Narashimha. Ito Nishimha Paratona. You are here, you are there. Wherever you go, you are there. Wherever I go, you are there. You're in my heart and outside as well. I surrender unto Lord Nishima. My shelter, my divine protector. So this is so awesome that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Narashimha, he manifested